Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for joining us, Secretary Haaland. Good to see you. This administration proposes fully funding the Land Water Conservation Fund and the National Parks and Public Lands Legacy Restoration Fund in the fiscal 22 budget. By your comments, I take this means that the administration is fully supportive of these conservation programs. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
While you comment about the existing leases, we know that they have diminishing returns. Any well has diminishing returns. If that's the case, can you explain how will we replace the revenue loss caused by the Biden administration's moratorium on all new oil and gas leases, which jeopardizes the main revenue source of these programs and the longevity of our conservation funding?
Thank you so much for the question, Congressman. And as I have stated, there are still over 8,000 leases, or I'm sorry, 8,000 permits that sit unused. There is over, there is millions of acres of land in leases that is currently that can be operational. So the pause on the new leases, it's only that, new leases and not any existing leases. There has been ongoing work in the industry since the pause was implemented.
Excuse me, I appreciate that, and no pun intended, but what you're doing is shutting off the pipeline for the future. And anything that we forestall right now that keeps us from doing the research and the development of those resources ends up impacting us later on down the line, which has put us in a position in years past where we've been so dependent upon foreign energy, which is not good for our economy nor our national security. In confirmation hearing, you promised that, and I quote, "The ESA should be driven by the science and is appropriate for species to be delisted when they have recovered." A March species status assessment published by the Fish and Wildlife Service concluded that the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and the northern Continental Divide ecosystem populations of the grizzly bear both have high resiliency and have met the criteria for delisting, have both reached and surpassed their target populations. You continue to claim that your administration will, again, in quotes, follow the science. Will you follow the science and move to delist the grizzly bear populations in both of these ecosystems?
Thank you so much for the question. And yes, the ongoing recovery is a remarkable success for the ESA, and we're happy about that. Our implementation, of course, as you mentioned too, will be guided by science and the law.
So will you then move to delist these populations as they have hit their target populations?
I appreciate the question, and it is noted. There are considerable challenges that remain overall with
They have met
recovering.
the target populations, Madam Secretary, and both have high resiliency. Will you move to delist these populations?
Thank you.
Just yes or no, really?
I would like to be back in touch with your office on that.
I would appreciate just a simple answer on that. If you have to go back and confer with your office to give us a yes or no. Missing and murdered Indigenous women is a very important issue in Montana, as you are very well aware. We have 7 reservations there. What are you doing to improve the collaboration between the tribes and the federal authorities to improve the investigation and prosecution of these heinous crimes which claim so many of our Native women?
Thank you so much. And our missing and murdered unit that I announced earlier this year is meant to provide leadership and use the full weight of the department to solve these crimes. One of the main priorities of the unit is for the unsolved crimes, but certainly the budget has been increased as well, and we are confident that we'll be able to move forward on that.
And I understand that. What I'm trying to get at is that collaboration, because we have the sovereign tribes and we have the federal government, and I know that we want to solve this, but there has going to have to be some kind of collaboration. So I would really like to get some detail on what we are going to do to try and bring these parties together to work on these issues.
The department has a very strong and experienced Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs who knows tribes very well. He's a former tribal president himself and is working very hard to make sure that he is collaborating with tribal nations on this issue.
Thank you for joining us, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.